Hello, BookTube, and we're back with your favorite Castaway. Well, maybe the only Castaway show on YouTube. I have here today Pat with from Book Chat with Pat.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. And and there's a few. Oh, wow, there's a lot of people here already. That's great. Thrifty Reader is here.
Nice.
Hello.
Hello.
And as we usually start out, Pat, if you want to tell us something about yourself and then something about your channel as well.
Sure. Well, I am a retired high school English teacher of almost 40 years teaching experience. And I retired and started to watch BookTube. I never knew BookTube was a thing, and I discovered a couple of channels, and I watched for over a year when I decided that maybe this was something that I could get into. Maybe this was something that I could do, and I mostly was talking at that point to Angelia at Read and Reread. She was the first booktuber I had ever discovered, and she was very encouraging and very, very helpful. And so a little over a year ago, February of 24, I started my own channel, and I've been having a lot of fun. One of the things when I was just watching, I had started initially watching Michael K. Vaughan, and I was reading his starter kit for science fiction, which I've discussed with you. So that was sort of my introduction to the genre, which had really completely escaped me in my life, and so I got very interested in that, and that was one of the ways that you and I have come to know each other. But I've just had a great time, meeting people here and developing a community. And I try to talk about a variety of books. I have one series on books I love to teach, which people seem to be interested in, things that I had a good experience with in my teaching. I try to focus on poetry at least once a week. And I do a lot of tags, and that's been a way for me to get to know people and to reach out to people. That's really my reason for doing those. It's really helped me, kind of become a part of the community and help other people feel a part of the community. I don't know, I just continue to read pretty diversely. I have a real life, in-person book group. That's very important to me. We read pretty widely. It's a lot of retired teachers, not all, but a lot. I just try to keep doing diverse things here. So that's a little bit about me, I guess.
We got a few comments here, so let's go through. Gareth is here from
Hi, Gareth.
Magic. Hello.
Gareth has been very kind to me from the very beginning. So, very well.
He's saying he's looking forward to this.
Nice.
And Joseph. Oh, this is they've changed something on StreamYard here, the way you put the comments up, so it takes a little longer.
Okay. Hello, Joseph.
Gavin's here. I gotta click twice to get something up. So Gavin's here. Hello.
And Gavin and I started together at the same time.
And
here's Mark.
Hello. Yeah.
Nice.
The thing that I wanted to say is because when you started, this was a conversation that I think Mark at Book Time with Elvis and I and Jim at Mystery. Oh, I always get something wrong.
Yeah.
Mystery and Mayhem, I think. If I get the right order. Sort of things that you see on BookTube, because when Mark at Book Time with Elvis started, or when we first discovered BookTube, all we saw were like teenagers and young people, and thinking that we're going to be unique because of our age, Right. And then once we do it, we find that there are lots of other people out there.
Absolutely.
And then Jim was saying too that that he didn't see anybody doing sort of vintage mysteries and vintage crime, but there are quite a few people that do that. And
Yes.
then I didn't see anybody doing, vintage science fiction.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's like, it's almost as if YouTube gives you what you want to see somehow.
Yes. That's so interesting. So interesting. Yeah.
So when you started seeing BookTube, did you notice something that you thought wasn't there, or like you only saw a certain type of?
In the very beginning, I discovered Angelia because she posted something in another form of social media, and I came and found a video. I didn't even know there was such a thing as BookTube, So she was the first I discovered, and I just thought, oh, this is really fun. This is just a retired educator talking about books. Like, this is cool. And then I think the next person I discovered was Michael. And I don't know how I got to Michael from Angelia, because they talk about very different kinds of books. But somehow Michael came up onto my, in my ken. And then Steve Donahue, I think, was the third. And then he would talk about, channels from time to time, and I would just kind of go and see what he was talking about. So it was really just sort of following people I knew were following. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, there are thousands of people doing this, and they're not all 18 years old. There are lots of people, and, I'm certainly one of the older people, but, there's lots of people not too far from my age. So
well, that's the thing. It's just I always, like I say, when I discovered it, it was basically, I think in 2017 I was home ill for a couple months because I had cellulitis, and so I was in my hospital at home, as they called it.
Okay.
So I was reading a lot, but also I started looking on YouTube, and then I started discovering this. But other than finding a few people like that were a bit older, but it was I did see Steve. I saw somebody else that was older, and then Amy at the Dusty Bookshelf. She was one of the earliest ones that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else was young, like in their teens or 20s.
20s, yeah.
And it just seemed like, oh, well, is that all this is? And then I watched it for a couple of years, and then I was on holiday in 2020, so I decided to start a channel and thinking, yeah, I'm going to be unique talking about old books, because they're all talking about what they call old books that are 10 years old. I got books that are 100 years. And then I'm finding, well, I'm not unique at all.
That's so funny. So funny. Actually, it's funny talking about age. Early on, I had a couple of really nasty run-ins with like people leaving really ugly comments. And like the first weekend I was here, I was talking about a banned book, and I got some really nasty comments, which I was not at all prepared for. And somebody wrote something very early on about, who's this old lady, talking about books, get out of here, or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like really nasty stuff. Very early on. And it was MJ who actually pulled me back, because I was like, this is not for me. I don't know what I've gotten myself into, but MJ showed me what to do and how to get rid of comments, how you can block people, you can block certain words, but I didn't know any of that. I was I'm embarrassed at how naive I was, coming into this, So.
Well, the thing is, like, people on the internet, they'll say stuff because they're sitting in their little, cozy little room, or, wherever they are, and they don't realize that, well, I think they do realize, but they got no comeback. There's no comeback to them. It would never say something like that.
Exactly.
Or generally say something like that to somebody's face,
right?
Because they know they won't have a face after that sometimes, because they are so nasty at times.
Exactly.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
A few more comments here. Mark is here. Yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Burning.
Mark had the most brilliant thumbnail the other day. I just saw
the one with these he's very hairy from the neck down.
I loved it. Absolutely. Yep. Hey, both. Mark.
Let's see. Hello, all. Yeah, all I feel is my ears burning.
We conjured him.
Uh, guess it. So, right. YouTube will offer videos on the feed they think you like. Yeah, and I think that that's generally how it seems to work.
Right.
Ariane's here.
Hi, Ariane.
Oh, I've missed a couple here. Wow. All of a sudden, a bunch of popped up. So I skipped ahead for some reason. That's why this is very strange now. I'm still getting used to the new StreamYard
Yeah,
here.
I have heard people are getting used to it. Oh, there's Jim.
Yeah. And oh,
Constance. Hi, Constance.
Yeah, Constance. And Mark's saying, yeah, I feel extremely young when I'm with the BookTube.
Right, right.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's also nice. Yeah, so
yeah. I have a lot of very lovely young friends here too. Yep.
And Ariane.
There's Ariane.
And the other thing that you were saying about sharing books that you love to teach, which is really cool because most booktubers are always complaining about, oh, I had to read this in school. Yeah. And it's, all we hear is this side of it. And then, you are giving us
the other side,
view from the other side, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And you've got at least one, I think, on your list. Let me just have a quick look here. Two that three that I had to read through school. So that'll be interesting to see.
Okay, very good.
So there's three of them. And saying, yeah, Pat is a great advert for teachers.
I have to say, a lot of people in response to that series have told me that they've gone back and reread a book, that they had read years and years ago. And of course, you're reading with new eyes when you're reading, as an adult. And some people have said, I still hated it. And other people have said, oh, I get it now. I didn't get it. I didn't get it when I was 16, or I wish I was in your English class, so and I do have some of my former students who find me here and who show up in my comments too, which is always, really delightful.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about rereading. And like you did a video that, and I haven't, because you tagged me in. You said
I did tag you,
but I haven't got around to doing it. But I am a huge rereader. That's the one thing. And there's when you read things throughout time, and I'm still rereading. Like in the last couple of years, I've been since I've had since COVID basically. I've been doing a huge amount, like a huge part of my thing is rereading, and there's so many things that I'm reassessing, and it's really nice to do that because some of it has been 40 years ago since I last read it.
Sure.
That makes I'm a different person, at least I think I am.
Absolutely.
In some ways. So yeah. So I
well,
think
you were the example that I used in that. I mean, it is a tag, I guess, but it was really a discussion about rereading. And you were my example for one of the questions about reading multiple translations of a book, and I was just talked about our experience with Les Miserables, and I know that you've read multiple translations, and you were planning.
Not all of them yet, but I'm on my way there.
I think I said in my video I thought you had read them all, but I know that you have another one that you're planning to read. But you've read a lot, and you can actually which are the really good ones, and which have shortcomings.
And you definitely want to do it with a favorite book. If you don't care for the book, obviously,
right.
Liminal Spaces is here. Hello.
Great.
So well, that's enough chit chat for that. Let's get into the meat of things. So you have your 8 books, your music, and luxury item, which I don't know. I never know what the luxury item is.
Okay.
So it's always a surprise for me.
Very good.
So let's go with the books, and it does. You can use the order that you had there, or any, because most people don't have them in actual orders. But, Yeah.
Okay. I might have them in order just because I was following my list when I made my little pile, but I'll start with a book I have talked about many times on the channel, and that's Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. And this is a first edition of the book. This was my mother's copy, well, my parents' copy from 1960, and it's just been a really important book in my life since I was a little kid. Am I supposed to talk about why I would want this book?
Well, basically, yeah. How you first
how I came to it,
discovered it, and
right.
what it means to you,
Sure.
and why you would take it, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Well, when I was a little girl, like way before I would have been reading this in school, I had an older brother who was reading it in school. And, that was before there were VCRs and DVD players and whatnot in the classroom. And he had an assignment over the weekend. The movie with Gregory Peck was going to be on TV, and his assignment was to watch it. And so we watched the movie as a family. So I don't know what grade he was in, maybe 10th grade. And, my mother and father, we all, the whole family watched it together. And I fell in love with the movie before I knew anything about the novel. And I think I was in 4th grade. So I would have been like 9 years old, which is young, but I guess I got what I got, and I probably didn't understand other things that were going on, but I was watching it with my parents, and then I discovered this copy, this book on my parents' bookshelf, and it was in my father's den, and I just took it off the shelf, right after we watched the movie, and I started to read it. And I just remember being totally absorbed by it. And I have this vivid memory of myself racing home from school, to get home, to go into my father's den and read this book, and I would read all afternoon until dinner time. And, I was a little kid. So, I didn't know what I was going to study in college, or, I didn't even know I was going to college at that point. But that was the first serious, work of literature, I think, that I read, that I was just totally captured by the world. And I fell in love. I fell in love with the world of this novel. And, then I read it with my class, whenever that was. I think in 9th grade, we read it, so then I read it several years later, maybe 5 years later. And I still loved it. And of course, I read it differently now as a teenager. And then when I started to teach, it was one of the first books that I taught the first year that I taught, because the first year I taught every grade. I mean, they threw everything at me. And then we were teaching this in the 8th grade. So I taught it to a group of 8th grade. So it's just been a part of my life, for almost forever. And then the fact that I have a first edition of it, and that it, belonged to my parents, that just makes it, I don't have many first editions. You are much more of a collector than I am, but I do have a few that belong to my parents. And so it's just a cherished item, and it's the first serious adult novel I read long before I was an adult. So.
Yeah, I came about it myself. I love that story of how you saw the movie and then see the book and do that. And that's a lot of times, I think a lot of people when they were younger find things, or at least I did too. And it's like, oh, oh, I saw that movie. I enjoyed that. That's a book.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to read that.
Right.
And that's kind of how this was, because when I quit school when I was 15. Like I had what they call early school leave, and then I went back when I was 18.
Okay.
So, but I skipped a year or so. So I was in, I think, grade 9 or 10. But the English, the books that they were doing there was just, they were just so boring. And the teacher knew they were boring for me. So at Christmas time, on the Christmas break, he took me into the book room.
Oh, cool.
gave me a whole stack of books, and that was one of them. So I wasn't really taught it in school, and then that was again thinking, oh, that was a movie. Oh, that's a book, and and then I read it and I loved it, and almost everything that he gave me, I loved. Even
that story, yeah.
And I, I've read it a couple times since, and it still is held up. And the movie is so great because I love Gregory Peck, and I, all the actors like Boo Radley. The actor's name is
it's Robert Duvall.
Robert Duvall, yeah, I love.
That was his first role, I think. That might have been one of his first roles. Yeah.
And then you learn other things that Harper Lee was on set, while they were doing this, and she gave Gregory Peck, I think, her father's watch. So the watch that he's using there, I think, is her father's watch.
What a great story!
All things like that just sort of come together, and that's where movies, to me, and books,
right,
work together.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, it's a fabulous book. I have not read the so-called prequel yet. I've got it.
Don't read it. I read it just because the book has been, a part of my life for so long, and I was sorry I read it. And I thought, Harper Lee didn't want, if she wanted this to be published, she had all those years to publish it. Somebody was making money there, and you're not missing anything by not, read it if you want to read it just because you love her and, this book was important to you, but it's not a good book.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I will eventually, I think, get around to reading it. But I guess the big question is too, was it really hers, or did they just find a few notes that she was,
certainly possible
to this,
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of controversy around that, I think.
Yeah.
There is. She never wrote anything else, really,
She really didn't. No. It makes me very sad because this book is now being challenged in a lot of places, and a lot of people are not wanting it to be taught anymore, and that breaks my heart because I think it's such an important book, and I think
it is. Yeah,
it will be a loss if it isn't taught.
Yeah. And then also too, because you got and if you look into this, you move on to other things like Truman Capote.
Yes. Yes.
So that's
right.
And that's another great writer, I think, too.
I agree.
That's how I discovered Truman Capote, is through hers.
Right. He's the little Dill character, the little kid next door. Yep.
Yeah. Strange little boy that grew up to be a strange little man.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So
we got a lot of comments here, so let's jump to some
comments.
Back to Mark's thing where I was saying chit chat. Yeah, chit chat with Pat. And liminal. I'm missing stuff here, and she loved it. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is jumping all around. Sorry, I have to go back.
Oh, he was. My daughter just read it for 9th grade. That was the
yeah.
Oh,
but yeah, what it did is jump back down to the bottom here. So, and liminal space said wow, and then cause says hi Chris. Just talking about watch the Babel 17 discussion. Really was fascinating. And thanks, Constance. It was a wild read. Nice first choice. Loved the movie as well. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, and Gareth saying that he studied Mockingbird in English class at school when he was 14. Yeah, that's the thing. I think, like you said, grade 8. I think that you taught it as, and I think that's
the first time I taught it, and that was in a private school. We taught it in 8th grade. Then when I moved to a public school, we taught it in 9th grade, and it is still in the 9th grade there, the freshman year. So
yeah, because I think it was done in one of the years that I had skipped when I went back to school. Okay. So, but the teacher gave it to me thinking that it was okay. Most of the stuff he gave me was for grade 12 and 13, I think.
Wow. I love that teacher did that. That was,
Yeah, and I think that re-sparked I'd sort of gotten out of reading a little bit at that time, and I didn't read a whole bunch, and that really got me back into reading big time. And I was 18.
Great.
Jenny's here, and she's catching up. She starts when she's late. She starts watching, I think, and then goes on like 3 times speed or something.
Hi, Jenny.
And Ariane. It's one of my favorite books, and the movie was so well done. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I
don't often feel that way, with a lot of the books that I taught, the things we had to show to go along with them were not as good, but that's one case where I think the movie is as beautiful in its genre as the novel is in literature.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever made a remake of it, and I hope they never do.
No, they shouldn't. Leave that one alone.
But I always think too that I think Harper Lee must have had an eye on the screen while she was writing it, because there is a lot of it's quite cinematic in many ways. It's not
absolutely.
It's pared down quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I always thought she was that way, or writing that way. Mark says he never read it.
Really, Mark? Oh, yes, Mark, please. Oh.
And
Libro Paradiso.
And read by Fred is here.
Hi, Fred.
Hi, folks. Happy Sunday afternoon. Well, Sunday here in Eastern North America.
Fred was my first subscriber before I had a channel. I didn't have a channel. I was just commenting on something on Steve Donahue's channel, and Fred liked my comments, so he subscribed to me. But I didn't have a channel yet. I just, had my name.
And Alex Day is here. No, it jumped again.
There's Steve.
Let me see. It's jumped again.
Okay.
I hate this new thing because I can't get.
Yeah, I heard somebody else complaining about this too. I can't remember whose live I was watching.
Libra Paradiso, read by Fred. That's too bad. I had it on my TBR, but it sounds like I should skip it. I guess, yeah.
That's the prequel or whatever. Yeah, definitely skip that.
The screenplay for Kill a Mockingbird by Horton Foote, that's another great writer. It's also wonderful. He won an Oscar for Best Adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
She loved this adaptation of her novel. Yeah, Horton Foote was a fabulous writer. Okay, now it's reset itself again, so I have to go back. Oh, this is horrible.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wow.
There we go. And Fred's back with chatting about Harper Lee.
He's rereading it right now. That's right.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I haven't read it in several years now. My daughter just read it for the 9th grade. So it seems like I think 9th grade.
Yeah, that's usually
right.
Yeah.
And she loved it. Yeah, so that's where that came from, that one. The other book by Lee bothers me on a lot of levels. Hate to think someone is making money off it. Yeah,
I agree.
Where are we here?
I see Steve Donahue. There we go.
Yeah. The closest things to Kill a Mockingbird remake was the Jeff Daniels recent run on Broadway, which was very different from a book or movie. Oh, so they did a play.
They did. Yes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Fred, Pat, I knew you were awesome before you had a chance. Thanks for joining the community.
Thanks for being so welcoming, Fred.
Pat, you may be remembering my difficulty in our live stream this week.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Gareth was having trouble, the same trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Uh-oh.
Both Hannah and I now very much like Go Set a Watchman.
Really?
Well, we got a fight on our hands.
Oh my goodness. Oh, we have to talk about that. Both Hannah and Steve like it. Oh my.
The PBS series "I Will Fly Away," starring Sam Waterston, was very similar to the book.
Oh,
Was that an adaptation of it, or it just happens to be similar?
I have not seen that. Huh. Tell us.
I think I've got them all. If I've missed your comment, I apologize, because StreamYard is a pain here now. Let's see here. The play has been around, saw community production in '77. Oh, okay. Which yeah, I could see it lending itself to a stage play, but I didn't know it was actually done. But it makes sense that it would be. So yeah, if I have missed your comment, I apologize. Steve says here, "Oh my, I'll Fly Away" was so good, wonderful to hear it mentioned.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that one
Either. No.
So, yeah, no, yeah, it's a great book, and I have to reread it again, and I've been putting that off because I probably will wind up reading Go Set a Watchman.
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll like it. I don't know. Steve and Hannah like it. So.
Well, I understand it just seems like it's like they call it a prequel, but I think I'm going to look at it as a first draft. But she's running through some ideas, and I think I came across somebody saying that it's not really a prequel. It's actually her first attempt at writing the story, and she wasn't pleased with it. And if you look at it that way, then yeah, it might set your mind up differently. I don't know.
I didn't like it, but I didn't study it. I can't say I would look at. Well, maybe I'll look at it again. I don't know, but I didn't like it.
Mick Holland says, "Hello there. Better to join late than not at all."
Hey, Mick.
Oh, I said Mike, didn't I? Mick, yeah. I haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird, but I am hoping to try and get through a lot of the books that were required reading in normal schools. You don't want the normal schools; you want the abnormal schools,
the exceptional schools.
Jumped here again. Let's see here. It was not an adaptation, but original series. Oh, that's the Go Fly or Fly Away, I think. Jenny, you have you avoided To Kill a Mockingbird because
Steve?
I'm afraid people. Let's go here. I'm afraid people will be mad if I don't like it, Steve.
Nah, we won't be mad.
Born and raised in Tennessee, but was never assigned this book.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see here. With Go Set a Watchman, there are legitimate questions of money grubbing by her relatives and estate.
Yeah.
But once you set that aside, the book itself is intensely interesting.
I suppose, yeah.
Let's see here. Wasn't there a theory that Truman Capote actually wrote the book? Oh, I did come across something referencing that.
Actually wrote To Kill a Mockingbird or the Watchmen book?
I'm not sure now because I came across something about him. I always thought that he, like, obviously she would have consulted with him if they continued to be friends as writers. But that's interesting. Please, Steve, tell us more about your particular Please don't.
He doesn't smell. I don't know why he keeps saying this.
Capote 100% certainly didn't write To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
My school didn't have any required reading. Really?
Really? What did you do?
What did you do, Jenny, to stop that?
What was English? What were your English classes if you didn't have required reading?
The cashier at the bookstore actually talked me out of buying.
There you go.
Well, I bought it at the Goodwill. Not Goodwill. What is it? It's this charity bookshop here in the UK. My brain's not working. I can't. But anyway, it was in the window, and it was actually the day that Harper Lee had died. I think it was.
Oh.
That it was that I was walking by, so I went to buy it, and it was only like £3 or something like that. And the woman behind the counter was speaking to the manager, and the manager was telling her to take it off the shelf because they're going to put it up in price. But it was too late. I already had it in my hand.
$3 or £3. Wow.
Jim, that cashier, should have been sacked on the spot.
Well, Steve is a long-time bookseller also. He would know.
Oh, yeah. It jumped again here. I may need a list from you, Pat.
I could do that.
And it'd be interesting to see a list from UK high school, like the general ones, and compare it. That would be an interesting thing to see.
I'm always interested when people tell me what they had to read, what was required and where we have similarities. I find that very interesting too. Yeah.
Capote rumor regarding Mockingbird. How could that little woman do it all?
Huh.
Because she had some talent.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Jimmy, considered I've been sacked. Okay, so that's where I am there. Mostly essays and writing exercises. We had to write an essay about Shakespeare, but we never had to read any of his plays.
Oh my goodness.
That's very odd.
That's a travesty. How could you write about Shakespeare without reading plays?
And Jim,
I'm going to have a conniption fit here.
I didn't snitch on her. In order for Capote to write To Kill a Mockingbird, he'd have needed at least writing talent, but he didn't have 1/10 of it. Well, I don't know. I do like Truman Capote's so his short stories and stuff. I like some of his stuff. I do like some of his stuff. Okay, that's
all right.
Yeah. I think I'm up. Jenny's got one here. Just do the last one, then we'll go on to the next book. Don't know where to start with plays either.
We could talk, Jenny. Should I move on to number 2?
Yeah.
Okay. So number 2 is F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, which is turning 100 this month. And in fact, I think it's supposed to arrive on Monday, the 100th anniversary edition, which I had pre-ordered. But this is one of the editions that I taught from. I taught this from this one. So this was very important to me because this is probably the first book that I read in high school that made me know that I was going to study literature in college and that I wanted to be an English teacher. And it was the same kind of powerful experience that I had with Mockingbird, except I was older. I was in 10th grade and I had an English teacher who was just wonderful. I mean, I loved her. I would have read anything that she, gave us to read. And I did, but it was an honors class. And on a Friday, she just handed out these books and she said, go home and read this, have it done by Monday. Well, they never assigned books that way. You know, in high school, you were always like dragging it out over, a long period of time. And I thought, wow, this is cool, and I mean, it's a short book. You could do that. I mean, today you couldn't do that, but back then you could. And, I just went home and I started to read it, Friday afternoon, and I couldn't put it down. I was, again, just totally immersed in the world, and I got it. I got what this was about. I got what Fitzgerald was doing before we even talked about it in class. And then I couldn't wait to get to school on Monday to talk about this novel. And I mean, I don't think I had the same experience with other Fitzgerald novels that I had with this, but I was just so, I mean, it's not a complicated story. And, I think a lot of the symbolism is very straightforward, but I was so excited by all of it and loved talking about the themes and, the sort of the corruption of the American dream. And I was just so excited that I just knew, I'm going to take every English class I can take. This is what I want to do in college. And even though my college degree was almost entirely British literature, very little American literature, I didn't get back to American literature until graduate school. This was the book, that just set me on that path. I mean, it was this book and the teacher who was, like your gentleman who gave you the stack of books. It was just somebody who was very, very just had a powerful influence on my life. I mean, she could have given me anything to read and it, I would have read it gladly, but something just clicked with this. And I recently did a video on it too, as, one that I love to teach, because some people asked me to do it because they said they didn't feel like they really got it. They didn't see what the big deal was. So I don't know. I tried to explain why I think it's important in American literature. So, and we do teach it. When I taught, I taught in two different schools. In both of those schools, we taught it as part of the 10th grade year, which was American literature in both schools. So it's, and it is still pretty much taught in most high schools here anyway, in the Northeast. So.
Yeah, I think for me, it was 10th grade as well, that's the first one that I read as part of the curriculum. And I did not like it.
You didn't like it?
We had to get together and write an assignment and to do a presentation on the ash heaps or the ash pits or whatever part there. And this is the one of the things that I didn't like about the way the teachers taught the books at that time. They would do class after class of telling you what X meant and what X was about, and then say, write an essay on what you think it's about.
After they've told you what you're supposed to think.
And me thinking, well, okay, I don't think it's like that. I think it's this. So a group of us came up with something else. And, and I, at the time I was friends with somebody who was doing an MA in English literature. And I had a feeling that there'd be a problem with this. So I let her read this, that we came up with. She goes, well, yeah, it's not what people say that it means, but you've backed everything up from the text.
Exactly.
So she says that you should do really well with this. But when we presented it, we got a fail for it because so everybody else just parroted what the teacher said and they got high marks. And that really soured me at that
Absolutely.
point.
I would hate the book too if that happened to me, Sure.
And there was other things that I didn't care for. But again, it's one of these, I have not reread it since then. And it is something that is on a future possible reread list. Yeah. But it's very low. It's very low.
I can see that. I mean, a teacher could absolutely, I happen to have really excellent English teachers at the right time that got me, hooked and got me wanting to be like them, but God, you could really screw somebody up. You could have a terrible effect too. And, I hope I didn't destroy too many kids in my career. I think I have more that became readers as a result, but I'm sure.
I think it's just a mistake to say this is what it's about, and then say you write an essay of what you think.
What do you think it's about? Yeah.
And like the one book that I really did like, that we did, which you haven't on the list here, is Grapes of Wrath. I really enjoyed that book. I was the only person in the class that liked that book.
Yeah.
But again, it was like, it was the essay. What was it? I forget who the character was. The teacher went on and on about who the central character was. And I can't remember now whether he said it was the mother or the preacher. And then said, write an essay on who you think is the central character. So I chose, like, if he said mother, I said the preacher or something like this.
Right.
And so, and I didn't do well in that class. But I still love the book. I still love the book.
I love that. I thought about putting that on here. I went back and forth. I spent a lot of time coming up with this list, and I was thinking about that. But I read that later. I didn't read that one in high school, and I didn't read it until I didn't even read it in college. I read it on my own after college. It was one that I missed somehow. So it wasn't one of like the seminal works in my formation, but it is a book I taught. I mean, I am going to do that in my series on books I love to teach. It's a beautiful novel.
Do you have a first to that one as well?
I don't. No. No.
That would be nice to have, like, a first.
That would be very cool.
But they've done some really nice reprints of those too. And
they have.
And I miss getting the I miss getting the 50th of To Kill a Mockingbird, and I think they did a 60th or 75 of Grapes of Wrath, and I missed that too. Getting those, and then those went up, out of print and up.
Yeah, exactly. No, the only first editions I have Mockingbird. I have a Hemingway. That was my mother's. My mother loved Hemingway. I have one Hemingway. I mean, I have a handful, like maybe 3 or 4 books that, I just squirreled away.
Get some comments here. And Jenny's saying, if another one that I read. And let me see if I jump to that one. Will that all of a sudden change it? If I figure out the way of doing this. Don't know where to start. Oh, no, how did I get that when I clicked on the one below it? This is really driving me nuts. I have to figure out how to do this. Am I even a reader?
You are a reader, Jenny. You just didn't get the right stuff in high school.
And then Ariane, that's laughing face. Thrifty reader. I had high hopes when I read The Great Gatsby, but sadly it was a miss for me. Perhaps a reread. Okay, and Jim saying, I lent my grade 10 English teacher my copy of Robert E. Howard's Hour of the Dragon. He was very polite, and I'm quite sure he didn't read it.
Oh, I would have read it, Jim.
Well, I went on a little excavation one time with an English teacher. Like she was taking this, and she knew, like, we started talking about books, and everything, and I told her all my horror stories, or for me horror stories of taking English, and she just thought they were horror stories as well. She said, not the way to teach English.
No.
And then she asked me, well, what kind of book would you want to teach, or should be taught in a school? So, of course, I gave her Clifford Simak's City.
Absolutely, yeah.
And she read it, and she thought there's no way they would ever do this. But she thought that it would have been probably a good thing, because it would probably engage the students a lot more than the books or certain books. But she was saying, they would never, ever approve something like this. But she thought there was enough there that there was lots of discussion and
Absolutely.
depth of discussion. So I thought I went, okay, that's one for me against
That's right. That's right. Well, when in maybe the last 15 years of my career, I taught a course for seniors in high school called contemporary fiction. And I taught it with a friend of mine. We each had sections of it. And our goal was to find, very modern, very contemporary books that would be kid friendly, that would actually attract readers. And we had a great time with it. And we had this great curriculum director who let us revise all of our curriculum every 5 years. So we could revisit, all right, this isn't working. Let's get rid of this. What can we replace this with? What's new for the contemporary fiction class that, we don't know about that we should be putting in? And we kept revising it. So it was like a living, work in progress. And that was one of the best classes I ever taught because we had the buy-in of kids, and really it was a very progressive public school system. I mean, they didn't second guess us. If we said we want to teach this, they let us, they didn't make us go through hoops to prove why we should or shouldn't, why we should be able to teach something. I think it's changed already in the little bit of time I've been gone, but it was a glorious time, I think, to be teaching,
Yeah, I wonder how many times it sort of has switched from the top as saying, no, this is what the teachers have to teach. This is teachers have to teach. To the down to your way is almost from the bottom up. That the kids are having a say in it, and then the teachers then go upward and people listen.
Right.
And it's probably not often. It's like that. My guess would be not very often.
Not very often at all, and less. As each day passes, it's less and less. Teachers feel very very disempowered, and nobody cares what they think anymore. At least what I'm hearing from my friends who are still there. And but I was lucky. I was lucky, and I've talked about this elsewhere. I mean, we used to have a summer reading list where kids, had books to choose from. But I used to go to the kids and I would say, tell me your favorite books, and then I would go and research them and see whether, is this something I can, put on a list? Because we had a couple clunkers. We had a couple that people didn't like, but the kids were the best. They were, I went to kids who were real readers. I mean, I wasn't asking just anybody off the street, but, kids that I knew were avid readers. And I got great suggestions for every course, for every grade level. And that's the way to do it. Then you have buy-in, then it's not drudgery. Then it's like, oh, cool. We get to read this summer,
Yeah. No, it makes sense to me. But the other thing, like going back though, I was just thinking with the, comparing sort of American, and you could even to Canadian and to British, curriculums. But also too, you would have to do it because when I went through, it obviously would be different from people who were doing it in the last decade or so. I think, things change over time, and it'd be interesting too if there was a way of charting this from say during the 20th century, to see the changes and what books stayed. Like I would just off the top of my head, Shakespeare probably is the consistent all the way through, unless they don't teach Shakespeare anymore. But I would think it's consistent.
Well, I would think so too. But here, Jenny's saying they never read a play.
Yeah. Well, she went to the weird school. Like she was saying the normal school. I said, why would you want to go to the normal school?
Yeah.
So she didn't go to the normal school. She went to the weird school. So I'm going back. Let's go back to the normal school.
Yeah. I mean, we were still teaching Shakespeare, but I had young teachers who didn't want to teach Shakespeare. When I was leaving, I don't know what happened after I left because I had some, I thought very bright teachers who didn't want to do Shakespeare. And I thought, this is not going well. I mean, a kid needs to be exposed to some Shakespeare somewhere along the line. And they weren't, they were trying to not do it. So I don't know. I would like to think it's still there, but anyway.
Gareth saying, yeah, teachers have such an impact. They can, and even the ones that they can have well, obviously, I think too. Yeah, they can have a very negative
Absolutely.
impact as well, and that's still an impact.
Yep. Yep. Can go either way. You have a lot of power. You can, make or break a kid, and I've seen it go both ways. I reread.
Yeah, I reread Great Gatsby back in February and enjoyed it. Latter half regarding the funeral and attendance was very powerful for me.
Yes. Yeah. Very sad scene.
Teachers make all the difference.
They can.
And Gavin said, I was introduced to Flaubert by my science teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. Had more pointers from him than the literature teachers. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't do.
I didn't read Flaubert until college.
Yeah, I don't think there were any. Guy de Maupassant short stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only ones that I remember taking.
Yeah.
A few of those.
Yep.
And I'd forgotten about those until now because, like, I usually say there's only a few things that I took that I enjoyed, but that was another one I enjoy. His short stories.
Right.
It's jumped here. Oh, this thing is driving me nuts. Pat, the chapter in the hotel room has some kind of sorcery behind it. In my opinion, it's so alive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Maybe it's good I didn't get these as a kid. I might have killed my love of reading. Yeah. I loved fantasy and sci-fi in school. Don't think I'd forgive them if they created a hatred of stories. Yeah, what's it like? Yeah, see, to me, I think that does happen. I think it's killed reading for some people, or they say it has. Yep. To me, it didn't. It killed me for certain books. Like I did not like that. I do not like being told, this is what you should think about this.
Right, exactly. Exactly what we don't want to be teaching kids. You want kids to become critical thinkers on their own.
That's because you're an awesome teacher, Pat.
Thank you, Jim.
And MJ's here.
Oh, MJ, hooray.
Popped in.
I conjured her up too. Maybe yeah. Oh.
Hey, MJ. Scotland is clearly he's weird. Now, did I miss anything?
I think that's everything.
Quickly go back through. I think I've got everything this time. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely I have to retry The Great Gatsby at some point because it's of a period that I was excited to read it because I did like the 20s then and I still like the 20s.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something. So that is one I should do, but it scarred me so bad.
It really, it sounds like it was awful, It
was.
A quick read for you, Shawn. It would take you I've seen how fast you read some of these books we've been reading together. It's not even 200 pages long,
Yeah, but you see, that could feel longer than Les Miserables. That's
yeah,
problem,
especially if you've been traumatized by it. But
I'm overemphasizing that.
I know.
But it's definitely not in the top quarter, not even in the top half.
I hear you.
People want to reread, but
eventually, sometime this year because it's the centennial year. So
that could be a good reason. And that's the thing. If there was somebody else that I knew was rereading it or something, and then I'd go, yeah, okay, this because otherwise I may never get to it.
Yeah,
and that's what I do sometimes is I go, well, this is a good excuse. So therefore, I keep saying this, but this is a good time to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, what's the next one?
Okay, so next, I have 2 copies of this. Next is Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, And this is my Norton Critical edition of it, because this was from college. Although there's a bookmark in here from a bookstore I used to go to that doesn't exist anymore. I must have wanted to keep that. But I read this edition I bought in college, a Norton Critical edition that was only $2.95. So I'm dating myself here. This I purchased in 1978, I think. But I read this, not the first time was not in college. I read it in high school, not with the same teacher that I read Gatsby. Gatsby was in American Lit. The next year was British Lit, and I had another incredible teacher. And I had not read any of like the major British classics, except maybe, A Christmas Carol when I was younger. But so this was my first Bronte. Now I've read all of the Brontes now, but this was my first. And, people love this book or they hate this book. People have very strong feelings about Wuthering Heights, but I loved it. I was 16. Again, it's one of these where I can see myself. I can see where I was when I was reading it. I remember an essay that I wrote about it. I just, now I was already decided I was going to study English, in university. That decision had already been made. But this was the first serious, long British novel that I read. And I was hooked. And then, I talked about it all the time. I talked about how much I loved this book. And I mean, I also love Jane Eyre. I read next, and I loved that too. But this was the first. So that's why I included it here. And then one year when I was teaching, I was given a very special teaching award. And my department bought me this hardcover edition of Wuthering Heights just as a gift for this award. And all of my teachers in my department inscribed it. So it's, they all wrote a little message to me. So this is just, it's just a special, a nicer edition. This poor thing is really falling apart. But, I just treasure that one because it was from my beloved department, all my good friends. So, and that was, that was the beginning. When I went off to college, my first degree was in English literature. And so we read really almost exclusively British literature. And I would read Wuthering Heights again, in at least one course in college. And then I read it again in graduate school, and I never taught it, but I did have kids read it as like an independent reading. And I had kids do projects on it. But it just, it's kind of where I began reading, serious English literature, I guess.
Yeah, this is the second one that I did in school too. And it was not a hit with me.
No.
I did go on to read everything else that the Brontes had written, and then I read all of Austen's, and that turned me off at that point for reading any more British fiction.
Wow.
Or Victorian 19th century British fiction.
Yeah.
I then switched to the French in translation, but yeah, and I've wanted to go back. I have not tried to reread that, and I think because even though I didn't like it, I still have scenes in my mind, so there was an impact on it, like at least the description, and I do have to acknowledge that. So if I go back and read any of the Brontes, that'll probably be the first. Do. I tried doing Jane Austen with Sense and Sensibility, and talking about a short book that I was agonizing, and I didn't even get halfway through. So that's what I mean. So even though it's short, doesn't mean. But if it's a long book and I start having that trouble, I just know I'll never get it done.
Yeah.
But I do want to reassess these because with a different light.
Right.
And it's something, because somebody did buy me all the Oxford World Classics of Jane Austen.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I read them through, chronologically, and I just never got through the first one.
Yeah.
And I've got to go back and try this again.
Yeah.
I think my gateway into it probably will be Wuthering Heights. I think that I'm going to do that first, even though I know Austen and Bronte's are, but in my mind, I read these over a summer, so there is a they're connected in my mind.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Excuse me. Put this off. Hold on 1 second. Let me just take this.
Jenny saying it's 0 for 3, so she hasn't read Wuthering Heights either.
Wow. Wow.
And Liminal Spaces says interesting choice. He loves Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
Costa saying, Sean, maybe the read is a way of owning your experience, or maybe a rereading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This one was a little hard for me. Wuthering Heights, I think that's referring to. And Costas is saying, hi, MJ. Let me see. Ariad says, a mistake some readers make is going in thinking it's a love story. It's absolutely not that.
No, definitely not.
I'm trying to remember how I don't remember how it was sort of pitched in the class. I think a lot of it was, and maybe that's why it's more in my mind for the descriptions, because I think that was more of a focus of talking about the landscape and the gothicness of it.
Yeah.
I think that's how that was done. So in retrospect, that was taught a lot better than the other ones. Definitely.
Yeah.
Because I remembered that. Like, I don't remember it in a bad light, other than for some reason I just didn't like the overall story.
Well, they're not really likable characters. There's some pretty awful characters in here, but yeah, the setting is incredible, and the Gothic setting.
And I think that's where, if I reread it, that's, even if I don't like anything else, I think I can latch onto that
For sure.
and enjoy something of it. I don't think Heathcliff is romantic.
No.
Yeah, and I really loved, let's get it up here. I really loved the prose, and the story was crazy, but everyone was so awful to each other.
There's a lot of terrible stuff in there. It's really almost like a Gothic horror story in a way. I mean, there's some awful behavior.
And the interesting thing is, like I say, I don't like these, memories are that I don't like the Brontes or the Jane Austens, but I love watching the adaptations, the costume drama adaptations. I can watch those and enjoy those.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So
I still know the stories,
right?
And they're still fresh in that way. I like the Brontes better than Austen. Okay. And I remember reading Wuthering Heights for school one weekend and loving it. I doubt I really understood much of it, though. I think she sent that too soon, maybe.
Oh.
Not sure. Pat, how does the landscape speak to you? How does the landscape speak to its themes?
Well, there's, just the wildness of the landscape, on the moors, the tempestuous environment, which really reflects the characters, I think, or at least some of the characters. That's how I always read it. I mean, there are the more staid, kind of conservative, controlled characters, and then there's, the Catherine Heathcliff characters who are, wild and crazy and killing each other through the whole novel, and I see that sort of reflected in the house and in the surrounding landscape.
Because yeah, you can see sort of the bursts of anger and violence as storms.
Exactly, storminess. Yep, tempestuous. Yep.
And MJ says I'm with Ariane Bronte's over Austen.
Yeah.
I probably would say that too. I think.
Yeah.
I think just from memory.
I think that's how I feel too. I'm more Bronte. I like Jane Austen, but I like there's more wildness going on in the Brontes. There's more conflict, more tension.
Yeah, no Austen to my name either.
Oh. It's all right, Jenny.
Just means that you got lots to be new to read, even they're old. I have to go. I'll get caught up later. Good to see you, Pat.
Good to see you, Jim.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, now we jumped here. Jenny's saying bye, Jim. And Mick saying, interesting what Shawn said about the adaptations. The BBC put me off the Brontes. Dickens and others. They're awful 1960s adaptation, Sunday afternoon TV. Well, I suppose, yeah, if I could see that if you like the books, and then, yeah, the adaptations aren't, going to be perfect or accurate at times. So I can understand that. But you see, to me, I didn't like the books, so therefore I liked the depictions of them, I guess, the way they did it, and I enjoyed those. But obviously, some more than others. Oh, let me see. Now we jump back here. There's no magic or dinosaurs in them, though. Well, there might be magic in some of those. There might be witchcraft. Non-bookish question, Pat. Any plans for spring gardening walks, coffee shop reading, outdoors?
I can't really read outdoors anymore. My allergies are such that I just can't do it. It's almost painful for me. And I live in a place where, believe it or not, we can't garden. I don't have control over the land here. I only own the inside of my condo. I don't, we can't garden outside. There is gardening, but it's done for us. I'm definitely looking forward to spring. I mean, I walk every day, and I am looking forward to being able to go to a park and walk. But it's been raining here for days. I was telling Shawn before, we've had like 5 days straight of rain. But I'm looking forward to some travel, actually, going up to New England. So that's coming this spring. We have a new baby in the family, and I want to make a trip to visit. So that'll be first up.
Jenny say real witchcraft or just strong and stubborn women.
She's calculating whether she's going to give this a try or not.
Yeah, 5 days of rain is just.
I know.
Yeah,
true.
Okay, I think I've caught up. Again, I apologize to anyone if I've missed your comment. I'm trying not to, but it's just trying. I just thought, because there's other now things here. I don't know. It's just have to continue on and get used to it eventually. So I think I'm caught up. So if we want to.
Okay. All right. So next, I have Charles Dickens' Bleak House. And this is kind of like along the same lines as Wuthering Heights, in that, you know, this I read Bleak House early on in college. I was hooked. I love Dickens. I know not everybody does. Um, I go back and forth about what my favorite Dickens is. But this is the one, for some reason, that I probably have read and reread the most. And I think it just has to do with the time in my life when I was first introduced to it, early on in college, and the professor that I had who was teaching it, who, you know, again, I adored, just a brilliant man. And so it, although I have read many other Dickens novels, for some reason I come back to this one a lot. I mean, I can't say I've reread it every year, but every year around late fall, going into like the Christmas season, I want to read it. I feel myself called to it. And most years I, even if I don't read the whole thing, I will, you know, read around in it a little bit. And last year I did just reread the whole thing again. And I've reread it a bunch of times. And I go back and forth between this one and David Copperfield as my favorites of Dickens. I like Great Expectations too. And these are not books that I taught. I mean, this is just too huge. I never could have taught this in high school. I wouldn't have been able to sustain it, I don't think. I did teach Great Expectations. But, you know, I'm just, this is just the one that I've probably revisited the most. I just like the world of the novel. So.
Well, that was one of Gavin's choices as well, and like I love the opening paragraph. It's just so evocative. And Jenny, there's a dinosaur on the first in the
yes,
first.
there is. Yes. Yes, there is. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. It's an incredible opening. But
Especially the last few sentences about the fog and everything.
fog everywhere, fog up the river where it flows among green heights and meadows, fog down the rivers where it rolls defiled among the tears. And it just goes on and on. Fog, fog, fog.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's my favorite. I haven't read them all, and
No.
I think with Deb's is here. I think. Did I see?
Yep,
Yeah,
I see her.
yeah, Deb's here. So with hers, I'd sort of floated the idea of doing a chronological read through of Dickens because I have not read everything.
I haven't
I've read
either.
half, I think,
Same.
and I do want to read everything. And
Me too.
so that may happen at some point, but it's going to be over a long period of time. It's not going to be a concerted sort of week by week or month by month for sure. No, definitely not.
Right.
But yeah, it's just everything about that. And I also love the 1980s with Diana Rigg as the BBC one. The newer one was good too, but I like that one so much. And I think that one they actually used they lit the sets by candlelight.
Oh, wow.
I
Wow.
think
Wow.
I might be thinking of something else, but
That could be.
but it just had a beautiful dark look to it.
Nice.
Oh, Jenny, it also has spontaneous human combustion as well. So
Jules is here. Oh.
yeah.
Awesome.
Let's go back here. Yeah, Jules. Hello.
Hello, Jules. I bought some books from Jules.
Jenny saying, yeah,
Oh, Jenny. Oh.
but as I say, there's dinosaurs in it, and there's spontaneous human combustion. So there you got some interesting things there. There has to be one, at least one that I've read. I don't think so, but we'll see. Fred says, "Oh, wow, Bleak House, just the size of that book scares me." 1,036.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah, that I hear a lot of, like, I have only ever heard that with on BookTube, of where people find big books or some books intimidating or large. And I think it's only because in your personal life, how many people do you discuss books with? Maybe, if
Yeah,
I'm lucky,
true.
and then getting on BookTube, you start going, oh, wow. You start seeing these things that I never even thought of, because it never permeated my universe.
Yeah, yeah.
These things, like, I've never thought of a book that scared me, the size of it, but it is something that is real, that people have. And all I say is that, that, like, me knowing now, Sense and Sensibility scares me more than that, or because it is not the size of it, that's for sure.
Right.
Let's see here, Ariane. I'm now highly scorekeeping.
Funny.
Mick says, we've had great weather here. I've been sitting in the garden reading Finnegan's Wake, and I have a bit of a red sunburned face.
Wow.
Now, a book that will frighten people. You've hit on an author that has at least two.
I'm reading Finnegan's Wake also. I'm in that same group, and wow, what craziness. The only one I hadn't read, and I have no idea what I'm reading, but I'm in. I'm doing it. Debs is doing it too.
Yeah. This one I've not read. The Bleak House. My favorite from Dickens is Great Expectations, which is probably the most trendy choice. Yeah, I don't know if trendy, but I guess it would be the most popular people know as Great Expectations or A Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah.
See, Tale of Two Cities, I like the way it starts. Like, I like the first line, but that's my least favorite of the ones that I've read of his so far, and I've read about half.
Yeah.
So that's the least favorite.
It's very different from the others.
It is, yeah.
I was just thinking I should reread that one, though, because I haven't read that in a long, long time. I taught it very early in my career as a very young teacher, but not later in my career. We taught Great Expectations. But I was thinking I should reread it, because it's easily been 40 years since I've read it. So. But, that's the thing. There are ones I've never read, and I keep rereading the same ones over and over.
Yeah. I do the same thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so maybe the Dickens read through will happen.
Yeah, maybe.
And Jenny says, I feel like such an immature reader compared to everyone else.
No. Oh, Jenny, I don't want this to be a downer for Jenny. I wish maybe I should rearrange my list and put something in here that will.
Well, the thing was, like, I haven't read hardly anything. I've only I did. Let me see. I don't think I read any specific book that she chose. So I hadn't read any of those. So that made me feel like, a non-reader.
Yeah.
And then, like, I read one author. I read one of the books. I think that's how it worked out.
Right.
So I was on the opposite end of that, Jenny.
Jenny, here's what we're going to do, Jenny. You recommend a book for me, and I will read it, and I'll recommend a book to you, and you read it, and we'll go back and forth. So,
recommends for her to read Remembrance of Things Past.
That's not funny, Shawn. I have abandoned that after volume 1. Oh.
Our garden is still under snow, and the open areas are muddy. Our dogs love it. Trying to wipe them clean is a challenge.
Let me just respond to this thing here.
I have not read Bleak House yet. Well, Ariane, maybe that's like, we've got our Balzac we're reading through. We're doing the Zola, so now we'll have to add Dickens to the list there, maybe. And Jenny says, dinosaur better eat someone.
Oh, no. Oh.
In a sense, it does, because what the dinosaur it represents, it does eat a lot of people, or it destroys people.
True. Destroys them.
And yeah, I've already, Debs is here. Wow, our dogs love the snow, but sadly we don't get enough of it. And Debs says, hi, Jenny. Feels like I missed something here. No, I think I've got everybody there. Oh, no, there's much more after this. Wow, this StreamYard is driving me nuts.
I'm sorry. This is such a pain.
Yeah, well, it just takes so long to find everything. Joe's here. I took the classics class in high school, trying to catch up with the thread. Wuthering Heights mentioned. Yeah, Wuthering Heights was pretty rough. Dinosaurs better eat someone, huh? I want to read that one. Jill says Bleak House is excellent. I found the earlier novels tough going, though.
Yeah.
Okay. And Liminal Space says, hey, Joe. Hello and thanks, Pat.
Oh, Jules has such a great channel. I bought some Penguin classics from him.
SH. Okay, I'm lost here a little bit. SHC.
I don't know what that means either.
It's piqued my interest greatly. No. Is it Proust that's supposed to be? Maybe I'm not sure.
She'll tell us.
Hey, Jules. Hello. Definitely up for a Dickens readathon. Yeah, I knew you'd say that.
Cool.
Everyone.
Yes.
The like button. Thank you, MJ.
Thanks, MJ.
Liminal spaces. Okay, I think I've jumped ahead here. There's a character named Jenny. Shake me up, Jenny. Count me in for Dickens. Okay, well, it's growing.
Yeah, really. We might have to do this, Shawn.
I should keep my big mouth shut. A readathon might finally start my education. Oh, that's up. Yeah, okay. Great to see you for St. Jules. Great to see you. In the chat, you have a unique and brilliant channel.
He does. He absolutely does.
Because I love Tale of Two Cities. Read it in one day in high school. Madame Defarge still lives in my mind.
Mine too. I just conjured her up in some video the other day. I was talking about her, and I haven't read the book in years.
Spontaneous human combustion.
Oh, okay. Yes, there is spontaneous human combustion.
Yeah. And Jill says, thanks to Gareth, and I love live streams and don't often get the time to watch them. Okay.
All right.
Again, I think I'm caught up. But I think one thing I'm going to do, at least now, going ahead, if somebody says hello to somebody else, I'm not going to fiddle with putting that one up.
Right.
Because it's just not, it's not useful here.
So next up, I have John Irving's A Prayer for Owen, Meanie. Very early in my education, I think I was between 2 years of college, and I was working in a drugstore. It was like a drugstore chain. It was called Drug Fair, and they had, you know, popular books on the racks, you know, and I found John Irving's The World According to Garp. And I just took it off, you know, on my break one day, and I started reading it, and I was like, what is this? You know, what am I reading in this world that I've entered into? It was another one of those experiences where, you know, it was a very popular contemporary novel. And I just loved this. I'm going to say magical. It's not really magic though, Jenny, but, you know, just this incredible world that Irving created in that novel. And I didn't know anything about John Irving, but I started reading him, and I read some of his his earlier novels after reading Garp. And then I started reading everything that he put out. You know, a book would come, and I would, like, he's the only author I can say when I was studying, I would put aside what I had to read for school. You know, if there was a new John Irving novel, I would be reading that. And then, you know, in my career, another gentleman in my department, he had proposed teaching this, and then I inherited the course from him after he retired, and so this was the John Irving that we introduced to kids. You know, this one came out in the 90s, and it was just, you know, it's a beautiful book. It's a coming of age story. It's a book about, you know, two guys who are friends from childhood, and it goes right through their adulthood. It's got the Vietnam War running all through the background of it. That's a motif in the novel. And it was one of these, you know, it was another great novel by him that, you know, did that same thing where I felt like I was entering into this other world. But it was one that we could teach and introduce to kids, and kids loved it also. And then, you know, as time wore on, it got harder to teach it because it was getting harder to teach longer books to kids. But some of my best teaching experiences in contemporary fiction came from teaching this novel. And I did do a video on this in my Books I Love to Teach series, and it got a bunch of people to reread it. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, well, it'd probably be the shortest one that you could do as well, I think, for
some of them are gigantic. You know? And some of them, I think we probably would have had pushback if we tried to teach them, even though I never really had any pushback. But
a Garp, you would.
Garp, definitely, because the guy who taught this tried to teach Garp, and I think the board put their foot down. I think they said, no, you can't do this. You know? He was a guy who always pushed, you know, the limits. So
yeah, I've read quite a few of his books, but I'm not a fan of his.
Okay.
I was just trying to because I get confused at times in my memory. Is he the one that did a bunch of books too on his book reviews, or is it somebody else I'm thinking of? Because I was going to say I like his nonfiction better than his fiction, but I think I might be thinking of somebody else.
Yeah, I don't think that's him.
Yeah,
I mean, he did Cider House Rules.
Yeah.
Hotel New Hampshire. I mean, he did a lot that really weren't great, you know, that are not really notable. But this is one that I would, you know, I think is up there. I mean, he's still writing. He's up there. I didn't.
He's definitely not who I'm thinking of then.
No.
He's still alive. Yeah.
No. Yeah, no, he's still alive. He's pushing 90, I would say. He's late 80s. I think his last novel was all over the place and not a success. It didn't get good reviews. It didn't sell well. But he is still writing. but anyway, so he's somebody that I have a soft spot in my heart for him, and he's actually very influenced by Dickens. To get back to Dickens, there's a lot that's sort of Dickensian in the world that he creates, although they're usually set in New England, usually in New Hampshire. So
yeah, and Jenny says 0 for 5. So
oh
not even
right,
her.
Jenny, I'm going to get Jenny on one of these, I think. Well, maybe we'll see. I'll keep going because we're
well, I was just gonna catch up on the
sure.
Comments here in between the books. Not familiar with this one at all. I remember selling John Irving as a bookseller in the 90s, but never gave him a try.
Wow.
And
I served him lunch once in the 80s. He showed up at the graduate school where I was.
Oh, wow.
I was working as a waitress to put myself through graduate school, and he showed up. All of a sudden, I'm standing in front of John Irving, and I waited on his table. He was very nice. He was a gentleman.
Constance says Garp was a college read, loved it. See, I don't even think they get away with teaching that in college now. Like, I think there'd be
now, forget it.
Yeah. They wouldn't. So I think I'm caught up. So yeah, let's.
All right. So I know you said, and I can't remember which episode it was in, but you mentioned that, everybody kept putting complete works of Shakespeare. And I did have that on my list. I had the Riverside Shakespeare on my list. And then I thought, no, don't do that because everybody's doing that. So I figured, all right, just pick a Shakespeare. So I just picked Hamlet. Because, there are a few that I taught over and over again, and Hamlet is absolutely one of them. So I can't tell you how many times I've read Hamlet, but, every time I would teach something, of course, I would reread it. And, so a lot. I've reread it a lot. It gives us endless things to talk about. I could have included Macbeth. That's another one that we taught over and over and over again. Those are the two I probably taught the most, but probably this is my favorite. And that's not very original, but, I think it's so much of literature connects to Hamlet and relates to Hamlet in some way, shape, or form. So it's, just been a really important book in my reading life and certainly in my teaching life. And, it's one I love to reread. So,
yeah, it's probably next to Macbeth. It's the one I've read probably the most as well, or reread the most, because when I, as I was saying, I was going back to school. I wanted to get through quickly, and then because I had my sights on going to university at that point, so I took as many classes as I could during the year, and then summer school. Sometimes 2 summer schools in a row, but
wow.
There were different schools that I would take these classes.
Wow.
So I remember doing Macbeth one time, and then doing the summer school, which was a different level or different grade. We did Macbeth again, and then it was like switching back between Hamlet and Macbeth at different grades. So by the time I was done, I knew both of those quite well.
Right. I'm sure you did. Yeah.
And Jenny says 0 for 6.
But I've seen The Lion King. Well, there you go. Yeah. That's certainly Hamlet related.
And Chris says, yeah, that's a solid choice.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then, this one is coming, and you are involved in this one. So, Victor Hugo, Les Miserables, and this is the Doniger translation. And I believed that I was the last person left on earth to read this book last year when, this was my white whale of a book that, I had just never read, and I never saw the movies, and I never saw the musical. I never saw the Broadway play, and I thought, I am the last person on earth to know about this. And I didn't even really know the story. I mean, it's very unusual. And then we had that read along last year when I was very new to BookTube, and I joined the group. We were in a Voxer chat together, and that's really where I think we got to know each other. And I learned of the importance that this book has had in your life. And I was very intimidated going into this, and I thought, I'm never going to be able to read this, with everything I've got going on. And then I couldn't put it down. I was so surprised at how absolutely captivating it was, and what an immersive experience it was. Like, I made a little plan for myself of how much I would have to read each day to get it done in the time that we were going to be discussing it, and I blew past my own schedule because I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop reading it. And I remember talking to you in the chat where you would be like, well, I just read all day. You read like another 30 pages. I was like, oh my God. And then you were done. And I still had like 500 pages to go. But it was just such a great group reading experience. And it's one I know I will come back to.
Yeah, that was Aaron Facer that sort of floated that, and I go, well, yeah, I just read it again last year, but I'll read it again.
Yeah, and you read it in like 2 days.
Well, it took a little longer than that.
Well, not many. I don't think it took you a week. It's like,
but I've read it now, I guess all the way through. I think 5 times. I think 3 different translations. 3 different translations so far, and I'm hoping to add a 4th one this month. But yeah, like you say, a lot of people find it intimidating, and I think a lot of it, they hear these digressions that he has, for history and things like that, and a lot of people are scared of those. I think. What's your take on those after having read it?
I mean, they didn't bother me at all. I kind of just went with it. I mean, I think, the long Waterloo digression was harder for me, just because there was so much that I didn't really know, and I wanted to. So I found myself, like wanting to look things up, so it was like slowing me down. The sewers, I couldn't believe how into that I was, I'm like, I can't believe I'm reading this and I'm enjoying wandering through the sewers of Paris. It was, I didn't mind them at all. And I guess that's what's cut out of the abridged versions. Is that what?
I think so. I've not read an abridged version.
Right.
So, but I'm assuming it is, because you could take those out and it doesn't affect the plot in the sense that the plot, but it will affect the overall impact of what he's doing with it, I think.
Right. Now, I wanted to tell you this. I was talking to a teenager this morning who is in high school, and she is reading it in high school. It is their book in English right now. I was blown away. And she said, I believe we're reading the abridged edition. And then she told me how many pages it was. It definitely is an abridged edition, but it's still a hefty book that they're reading. And I said, well, what do you think of it? And she said, I love it. So I was like, awesome.
That's cool. Yeah.
Another one.
Well, that's the thing. It's I think people, if they give it a chance, I think they will like it. But like, he doesn't. It's not your typical novel, and even of the time, because it has all this other material, and he wasn't unique in doing it, but it's the kind of thing that I think you really will miss the impact of it if you don't read those sections, those history, and especially the sewers. I just wish the sewers part was longer, because I love it.
I know, because everybody had talked about that, and I was like, oh no, here we go, and then it was great. There was nothing that I would have not wanted to read. I mean, that's how great an experience it was. So this is a book, I know I will revisit. And I just couldn't, I don't remember how long we read it over, what the actual time
it was month, wasn't it? Just
was
in
it a
April?
month? Was it just April?
I think so. Yeah. Some took a little longer to read, I think, but
Oh, like it went very quickly.
yeah. And the thing is, like talking about the asides and everything like that. If you read the Hunchback or the Notre Dame de Paris, he says somewhere in there that the story of Esmeralda and the plot story is something that he's tacking on to the story of the the cathedral. So it's like it's he's looking at it in a completely different light.
Yeah.
That's the actual story, are the asides and the history and everything like that. And I gotta throw in a pot boiler plot here.
Yeah, exactly.
People interested. But he really, you could see where he's working on his style of doing that, and he's really refined it, obviously, with Les Miserables.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always say, give it a chance. But there are some people that just have done it and read it through and just hate it. And I find it, and the thing is that I always find this interesting, and it's always great to hear people's others views on things and trying to understand those, because a lot of times I find is like the people hate the asides, and those are the things I love. So it's usually the things that they think are detrimental to the book are things that I think are the strengths. So it's very polarizing in that way.
Yeah.
And it's just it's been called like the novel of the century. There was a book that David Bellows wrote called the novel of the century, and people have says it's the best novel ever written. But like Steve Donahue quotes, if he's still here, like he quotes somebody saying, well, it must be the best novel ever written because it's not good, or something like that.
Oh,
something to that effect.
Yeah.
That he quotes somebody.
Wow. No, it's a beautiful, beautiful novel. And I was just so pleasantly surprised at how readable it was,
And that's very much, I think, Christine Doniger's translation, because if you read Charles Wilbur's translation, which was the first English translation, which I think at least one person was reading and didn't like it, and definitely didn't like it at all, and went on about it. And I did suggest that it might be the wrong one.
Yeah.
Read. And some of the problems that they had with it was because of the translation.
I'll bet you're right. Yeah.
Okay, so okay, just go through Liminal Spaces is solid choice. Never read. I think we're still at Les Mis there. And Ariane saying Les Mis is brilliant. It was one I never thought I'd read.
Yep, she was in the group too. We were in that together.
And Jenny says 07, but I've seen the movie. Love Hugh Jackman. Is that the best translation to get? Yeah, I would say it's the best translation to have of it, the Christine Doniger's.
Yeah.
And Debs loved it as well. And Ariane says she'll definitely reread it. And Constance referring back to Bleak House, missing for Jenny. Yeah, it was think of Judy, not Jenny. Judy, Jenny, very similar. I'm not nice enough to be Judy. Here, there is a Jenny in our mutual friend, and she's a great character.
I thought
this Judy is pretty dour. Give me a Jenny any day. Joe says read it in high school after Moby Dick. And then Miss Davis let me take her SF class twice. So you read?
There is a Jenny. There's a Jenny in Bleak House too.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah.
So Joe, so we're talking here that you read. Is it Bleak House or Les Miserables that you read in high school? I'm assuming probably Bleak House. And Constance referring to thanks. I've heard that is a good one. Let's see here. We Jennies do tend to be ridiculous and fun. Let's see here. I've got to run. I'll watch later to see the rest of Pat's wonderful choices. Thanks for stopping by, Joe. And the Waterloo section was the hardest section for me. I love yours. Yeah, see, but that's the thing. But it told you so much about Thénardier. It tells you so much about him, what made him, why he's like he is, and everything, and explains so much later as well. And it's also you think of it from a French person's point of view. It's so patriotic. It's not historically correct, but it's so patriotic.
Right. Well, now I'm wanting to read it again. So.
I think I'm getting near. Pat, I was thinking of Judy.
Yeah, there's a Jenny and a Judy. They're both in Bleak House. But she was thinking of Judy.
Les Mis. I was pretty overwhelmed with the classics that year. Wow.
Yeah, Les Mis and Moby Dick. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So yeah. Will it be 8 for 8 for Jenny now?
Okay, so I thought that I had to have a poetry book with me on this island. So I chose Mary Oliver's Devotions, which is selected poems of Mary Oliver. And this was a collection that came out right around the end of her life. And so it has in it excerpts from all of the books that she wrote from what was the first one? The last one was in 2015, and the first book was in the 60s, 1963. So it's not a complete collection, but it is a representative sample of her entire poetic career. And she is just a poet that I've loved for a long time. She writes a lot about the natural world and our relationship with the natural world. She's very accessible. I talk about her on my channel a lot. I mean, I do poetry at least once a week on the channel, but I find ways to work her in whenever I can. If I'm doing a thematic episode, I'll put in a Mary Oliver poem. She's been criticized by critics for being too accessible. I think she's made poetry, she's opened up poetry for a lot of people. And I think that's a great thing. And she's someone I go to all the time. Like I dip in and out of this book and I'll read just a few poems or just a poem even, it's almost feels holy. There's something so comforting about her to me. And I did teach her also, but I've been reading her, well beyond anything that I taught. And I would love to have this collection with me. I mean, I have most of her poems, her poetry collections, in small editions, but this would be the one to take on an island. So.
Yeah, just pop up Jenny's thing here. So yeah, it's 8 for 8, and poetry confuses me, but I want to get better. Steve thinks it's because I've only tried modern poetry.
Well, this is modern, but it's very clear and accessible. You would read any one of these and know exactly what it's about because she's writing about what she says she's writing about.
Yeah, as Constance says here, is very accessible. And this is the only I've not read this book, and it's the only author that I've read all the other books that you chose.
Wow.
but I've not read any of her poetry
Okay.
either. So I've known about her.
Sure.
It's the one that I've not read anything of her poetry, so I can't even say that I've tried her. So,
Right.
but yeah, no, I think I don't know if it's like going back to Jenny's remark there about what Steve said about because it's modern. I think some modern poets are good. It's like yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's like and some old poets are bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
There's no,
depends what you like.
I mean, I read it all, but she's just someone who it, it, it just, she speaks to me. I feel a level of, if I'm nervous or anxious, she brings me down, she brings me back to earth. Um, and I also think she's deceptively simple. Sometimes it is very straightforward, but I think there's more to it. I think she's talking about important ideas, I think. So
Uh, and Mick says, FW.
for what it's worth,
Yeah, I struggle with reading poetry. I can listen to it and enjoy someone else reading it, but the words on a page I struggle with.
I
I think
get
a
that.
lot of people do. I think a lot of people do.
Yep.
And yeah, I think a lot of people do. Uh, and there's so much out there. That's the thing. But and Jenny is asking, what's a good collection to start with?
Of Mary Oliver's. Mm.
Or just like maybe get a survey that has
Yeah, I mean, that's what I recommend to people who want to get into poetry, like an anthology of, that spans time, where you can pick and choose a bunch of different poets. I mean, if you want to read her, I would get this because it's got something from her entire career in it, and it's in paperback now. I mean, this is,
yes.
you know,
Well, I think it's the same with anything. Well, not with anything, but people to ask about where to start with science fiction. It's like, yeah, I think the best thing is short stories.
yeah,
Get a collection that spans right up to now, and
yep,
then pick out the authors that do something to you.
yep.
Rather
Great
than get
ground.
into the book. Yeah,
It's a
uh,
great suggestion.
yeah. So
And
yeah,
Jenny, I can recommend anthologies to you that are very accessible. There are lots that have. I mean, there's when Billy Collins was the poet laureate, he edited two um, volumes. I think one was called Poetry 180, and it was just a collection of 180 poems. And the idea was that he wanted people to read a poem every day in school, every day of the school year. And then he did a second volume of it. Like, those are great books just to read around in, because there's old stuff, there's new stuff, it's just, and then you see what you like, you see what speaks to you.
yeah, and Roy's Desert Island Books, he had a collection which I
Mhm.
never heard of, but it was very interesting. It's only British though; it's only British poets or UK poets,
Uh-huh.
but it had like a little brief, I guess, introduction of setting the time period as well, which I thought that was really cool,
Yeah.
and not too many anthologies of poetry does that.
Right.
That's one thing that's a plus, but the minus is it's just if it is a minus, it's just British poetry.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so so you'll miss everything else. But
Right.
then to get probably a world survey of poetry is like, ooh, that would be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have the Norton anthology of poetry, and that's not world at all, but it's British and American, and it spans the centuries. So that's a pretty good one also. But but I wouldn't start with something that big for Jenny, who just wants to read a little bit of poetry. I'd get you know, like the 180s. I think those are really, really
And
good.
even Penguin has put out a couple good ones that are really good.
Yep.
There's one that just if you just want to look at 20th century poetry, and also older ones.
Right.
I like the Oxford ones. There's so many different ones of
Yeah.
those different editors. The BBC have even put out one. I don't know if it's all British or not. I can't remember.
Wow.
Uh,
Nice.
And Jenny says, I have a few poetry collections to mine and Gareth's, but they intimidate me. 1,000 pages, page fantasy, no problem. 200-page poetry, fear.
Oh,
Well, don't look at the page or just look at
right.
read the poem. Just read, just read, because like I don't think none of my poetry or Gareth's are more than a page and a bit long, maybe. They're not long poems. They're not epic poems. So that's the way of to approach anything. You would like the Billy Collins poem about teaching poetry.
Yes. I read that in an episode I did I read that twice. I read it in a Billy Collins episode, and I also did an episode on poems about teaching, about the teaching profession. And I read that poem in both of those episodes. It's very funny, about how students think they don't know how to read poetry, and they want to tie the poem to a chair and beat the life out of it, and it's not really students who do that so much as teachers do that. But it's funny. It's very funny. So I'm going to do a Billy Collins episode probably this month for National Poetry Month also, because he's one of my favorites. So yeah, so those are my books.
Yeah, so now we got I really like your music choice, but let's get to the music choice.
Okay. So for music, I picked Bach's Brandenburg concertos. And my reason for that, besides the fact that it's, just a very, very beautiful, 6 concertos for several instruments. I think it's the first piece of serious, classical music that I learned about. When I was young, I had a roommate in college who was a music major. And so I learned about music. I always, knew about the music that I listened to, rock and whatnot, but I learned about classical music from, living with this roommate. And I remember her bringing home, to our dorm, the Brandenburg concertos. And she was like, you just have to listen to this. And we were playing that. That's what we were playing in our dorm room. And she would go on to do her senior thesis and her senior performance on Bach. So, he figured very prominently throughout my college career. And then all of my life, when I was, I used to spend every weekend grading papers. I worked 7 days a week, and I used to play Bach in the background just to shut out the noise in my head and shut out other noise. That was something I could listen to while I worked, while I prepped my classes, and while I could grade papers with classical music in the background. I obviously can't have words in the background if I'm reading something, but so it's just something that I have played and replayed and come back to over and over. But it was the first piece of classical music that I was introduced to, and that told me that I can appreciate this, that I can listen to this and get it. And it has stayed with me all of my, from the time, I guess we were 18 when she brought it home to us, and I've been listening to it ever since. So.
Well, like we were talking about with the poetry, like there's some poets that are accessible and good place to start.
Yeah.
And for classical music, this is a great place, I think, to start as well.
Yeah.
Because people will actually see things in there if they have a good, not just even a good ear. You'll start hearing things that are from rock music, because rock musicians have taken this kind of a lot of this material, and Bach as well, and jazz musicians as well. They've rearranged stuff. They've played it backwards.
Yeah.
And it's all in music after.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. And it's on its way out of the solar system now on a record.
Oh, wow.
of them are. I'm not sure which one, but it's on I think the Voyager,
Uh-huh.
the disc, the gold disc.
Oh,
There's one of the. I'm sure there's one of the Brandenburg concertos.
oh, cool.
Somebody
Isn't that cool? Wow.
correct. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's how how important it sort of is. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, absolutely. When you asked me this question, I was going to, like, I was thinking about, well, what albums, have really been important in my life. And, I was for a while, I was kind of fixated on Bob Dylan because I listened to him since I was like 12. And he's probably the person I followed the most closely throughout my life. And there are emotional and personal reasons why I have been attached to him. And I have favorite albums and all that. But then I thought, no, Bach opened up worlds for me. And it really is something that, and this, piece, the Brandenburg concertos especially, is something that I've, you know, just visited and revisited. Well, of course, you can revisit it anytime, but it's kind of like always in the background. It's like my background music in my life, I think, so.
Yeah, like Constance say, nice music choice. Let's move on. You can't go wrong with Bach. I'm a sucker for the Goldberg variations. Yeah, those are wonderful. I love Bach cello suite. Oh, what's happened there? All of a sudden, my screen disappeared.
Uh-oh.
Here?
Yeah, you're still here.
Okay.
That's weird.
The planets and Swan Lake are big parts of my childhood theater experience. It was a great gift.
Yeah.
Mick, I am sure I've heard those on the classical station. Yuri's here. Great to see you again, Shawn. Nice to meet you, Pat. I can absolutely relate to what you're saying about music on books.
I'm with Jenny. Okay, there you go.
Did I miss anything else? No, that's what. Oh, I just wanted to say, like, it's the off topic though is the Bob Dylan that you mentioned, because I remember reading a little article a few years ago of some academics that there was a group of academics, I think most of them are doing science and writing scientific papers, but they were always huge Bob Dylan fans.
Oh, wow.
And every paper they write, they try to get a line of Bob Dylan's lyrics in it.
Oh, I love that.
It apparently on every paper and every book, everything they've done.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I would love to read about that. That's wonderful. So.
And Jenny says here, I'm definitely unsophisticated. No Bach in my life, though I think I'd recognize them if I heard them.
You would.
Yeah, like it's a great way to get into classical music. I think is short pieces. It's like anything. Short poems to get into poems, short stories to get into reading, short pieces of classical music to get into classical music.
Yeah.
I think it all works. Yeah. So no, I really like that choice. So yeah. So now your luxury item.
My luxury item. So I love some of the luxury items that some of your other guests had come up with. And I thought, oh, I would have liked that, like Deb's with her coffee maker and her coffee, and Roy had a bed, I think, or a mattress, and Gavin with unlimited paper and ink. And I thought, because I was going to say my journal, I would need to have that, but that's kind of, Gavin already took that one. So I thought, I'm going to go with my lifeline. And this is something I talk about on my channel too. I go to the gym 6 days a week, and working out has become a true lifeline for me. And if I'm on a desert island, I can do all my walking, and I could probably swim too. So I could do that, and I don't need any equipment for that. But I would need weights. I would need my free weights, or even a little universal gym, maybe, with like a couple of, machines on it, so I could keep lifting, because it's given me a new lease on life. And I think I would be lost without it. And it not only is keeping me, in good physical health, which has not always been the case, but it's helping my mental health as well, because if I don't go and work out every day, I'm in a bad way. And if I can get some stuff worked out, it helps, especially in this crazy world that we're living in. So that's going to be my luxury item, either a stack of free weights, different sizes, or, maybe just a little universal gym where that has a couple different machines, so I could work my legs and my upper body. So
either just get different sized coconuts.
well, yeah, I thought about it. I was like, well, is there anything on the island that I could use? But I do, like one day I'll do an upper body workout, and then the next day I do legs, and lower body, and then another day I do just cardio. So I need a little bit more than coconuts, but you get my idea. Yeah. So that was it.
Yeah, and Yuri said, just applying to Jenny, but they grew up with sci-fi too, and adventure and a bit of fantasy.
No pain. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, so that's another edition of Desert Island Books.
Well, that was awesome.
I sometimes want to say the discs again, but yeah, they stole my idea. That's all I say. What's Yuri saying? Sean, Pat, can you recommend translation of Les Miserables that is in public domain?
Oh,
there's quite a few. There's the Charles Wilbur, the first one. There's the Raxel's, some of the first British one. Those were both done in 1862. And then there's the Isabel, is it Hapgood or Hopgood? That was the late 1800s. Those are definitely in. There's three of those that are in the public domain. That's definitely, but they're a bit stodgy, I think. So the best one is the new one. Luxury item: Pink Floyd, working out, starting at 12. Started at 12, now 70. Wow.
Excellent. Wow.
Isabel, yeah, Hapgood, yeah. I always get mixed up, Hopgood or Hapgood, yeah. She's probably more complete than the previous ones, but still issues. It's not the most complete ones are the most recent ones, for sure. That's the thing. The Christina Doniger one, I think, is the most complete in English. So yeah. So well, thanks everybody for stopping by. I'll be back next week with Jim from Murder, Mystery, and Mayhem. If I got that, I get them mixed up. And then so we've got, and everything's listed down in the descriptions. And thanks, Pat, for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Thank you, everyone. This was really fun.
Yeah. So and hopefully by next time I will have figured out a little better this new way of StreamYard's comments, which are driving me nuts.
Yeah, that was.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.